would stay with these developments in the DRC and speak to Dean Wingrin, who's a defense analyst, who's joining us this afternoon. Dean, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, let's just start with your take on what's taking place in the DRC.
Good afternoon, and it's really tragic what is happening there, particularly as this could have been foreseen some time ago. And sort of over the past couple of months, early and in the middle of last year, there was a sort of a ceasefire between the warring parties of the DRC government and M23. And over the last month or so, that broke down. And M23 really started its activities in that area. And unfortunately, it seems like some intelligence was a bit of a breakdown from the South African side, SADC side, the UN side. And something like this should have been foreseen. And unfortunately, one of the problems of our deployment is that the politicians still seem to think that this is a peacekeeping mission, and where in fact is a peace enforcement mission. And the mindset and the equipment between the two is very, very different. And with the South African budget of the last few decades deteriorating to such an extent, South Africa just wasn't, our troops in the theatre in DRC just wasn't properly capacitated and supported and equipped to deal with the magnitude of the task that happened over the last week.
And, you know, Dean, you talk about the issue of budgets. One conversation we've been talking about here on the show this week has been that defense review and how it continues to lay bare over time just how that issue of budgets is really one that needs urgent attention. But I'm keen to hear your thoughts on these developments. You looked at this statement yesterday by the presidency here in the country, and then hours later followed by Rwanda's president, Paul Kagame, with a strongly worded statement. Your take on just the dynamics there?
Yes, it was a very interesting briefings that we had yesterday by the Ministry of Defense. And it took them a whole week to actually say something, and equally from the president to address what has been happening here. And I must say that the briefing, I don't think, went off as should have been expected. It was a little bit hodgepodge in the information and contradictions that came out of that, particularly after President Ramaphosa's statement thereafter, which really seemed to get the ire of President Kagame of Rwanda. And he really sort of dug into President Ramaphosa's statements after that, which really ratcheted up the tension between the two countries, which is really the last thing that is required right now. We still got a couple of thousand troops in theatre. They're in a very dire, precarious situation. And the first thing that needs to be done is to get them out of that immediate threat area. And that needs to be done diplomatically. And only once they have been brought safely out of that immediate area can then stronger words can be said.
So,
but right now, yeah.
So, Dean, you say that they need to be, gotten out of that immediate threat area, but the president yesterday saying that they're in a safe space?
There's not being attacked at the moment. So if you want to say they're safe because they're not under constant fire, then yes, they are safe. But they're in a very precarious situation. There's the main base is at Sake, which is about 25 kilometers to the northwest of Goma Airport, where the rest of the contingent is based. And that whole area is surrounded, and the airport is taken over by M23 and the Rwanda Defense Forces. So they are in a very dangerous situation in the sense that they don't have much ammunition. And M23 knows this, and they've imposed certain conditions on the troops there that restrict them really to their base.
Yeah.
And they don't have freedom of movement there.
And
So they're really, so it is a difficult situation, and it's so fluid that it can change hour by hour.
I want to take you to something that you said, because it was going to be one of my questions about the briefing by the ministers yesterday. You're describing it as a hodgepodge, and you say that there were lots of contradictions for you. What stood out?
Well, if you look at Minister Macheka's, our defense minister's briefing, the couple of things that came out was, one, she keeps referring to them as peacekeepers. And this Rwanda really jumps upon, and they correctly point out that they're not peacekeepers. South Africa has taken a side, and that side is to support the Congolese army and the Congolese people against the rebels. So the mandate, if you look at the mandate of the SADC mission, it specifically states that they're there to neutralize negative forces and armed groups and to support the Congolese army. So that's the one thing that both her and President Ramaphosa keeps referring to. The other thing is that I'm not sure if it's the blame game is already starting, but the minister already says, oh, the generals never said that they were running short of ammunition. Well, let's get the generals a bit of the benefit of the doubt. The minister was in Kinshasa on the Wednesday, and she only went, I think, to Goma on the Thursday morning. Well, the main thrust of M23 rebels was against Sake on that Thursday morning. And I'm sure at the time she was talking to the generals and being briefed. Although there was fierce firefight going on, I'm sure the generals felt that it could be contained. They have contingencies for a certain amount of ammunition at the forward base, and then they've got additional ammunition at the logistics base further back, and then even more at a third base, even further from the front. So I'm sure at that stage they were confident that they could resupply Sake. But I think the firefight was just so intense. And when M23 then went around Sake and then attacked Goma from a different direction, I think that that really put everybody under pressure. And when they started running out of ammunition on the Friday and were resupplied early Saturday morning. Another thing was the minister mentioned that M23 was firing over the base towards the Congolese forces, which President Kagame of Rwanda then immediately jumped on and said, no. Ramaphosa said that it was the Congolese army that had shelled the South Africans so he's really driving a wedge between South Africa and the Congolese government by saying that. And in much the same way during Ramaphosa's briefing, he referred to the Rwandan Defense Force supporting M23 as a militia. And once again, Kagame said, no, it's not a militia, it's actually the Rwanda Defense Force. And this is the closest Kagame and Rwanda has ever come to acknowledge that the Rwanda Defense Force is actively supporting M23, although officially they still deny it.
So, Dean,
and an interesting point is, that the president's website, when they put up his statement, actually deletes the word militia from that.
So in your view then, when it comes to South Africans' understanding, because when you speak to some of the, the analysts watching the situation, they talk about the fact that take South Africans into your confidence and explain exactly what is going on there, and you won't be able to be left with confusion. But when you look at the mixed messaging that has been coming out about what exactly is going on there, who is doing what and what needs to happen, does it help at all with South Africans understanding exactly what's going on there, and what damage does this cause in the court of public opinion?
No, exactly. I don't believe the minister, the president, was properly briefed. I think for a start, I mean, he's not expected to know about military affairs and so on, but I don't believe he was properly briefed. The Minister of Defence's briefing just also appeared to be hastily put together and not properly prepared as to what the message is that they're going to put to South Africa's public. And it came 5 days after the start of this conflict. And in this day and age of social media, and the immediacy of videos and testimony coming out from the theatre, it is way too late to then start making statements. The horse has already bolted. The public has seen videos coming from the front, and without immediate repudiation or support or explanation from the Defence Force and from the ministry, the public already has made an idea in their mind. And it's very difficult afterwards then to go and change that idea. And Rwanda has a very effective, I'm hesitant to say propaganda, but information warfare abilities, both on X, on TikTok, on other social media. And they're very quick to jump in and push their narratives, whereas South Africa appears to be very slow on the uptake of that.
All right, let's see then what happens in the next couple of hours, because some South Africans have been saying, are you going to respond to what President Paul Kagame is saying, and who's going to say what, and what then, becomes the way forward. But let's see then what the next couple of hours look like. Dean, I appreciate your time this afternoon.